can, and we've had some excellent foster carers that haven't had their own children. But I think what we would say is that you would need some experience with children. So maybe people that have been community workers or worked in schools, reception workers in schools, or even in sort of hospital work where they may have dealt with young people coming in. So any sort of experience where you've actually dealt with sort of young people, sort of 12 to 17 or 18, in a work way or a voluntary way. I think we'd want that. And sometimes we send people away and say, can you go and get that? And then they come back and they've got that experience.
So if somebody comes to you and says, here we are, we've got a nice home, we've got a nice stable relationship, whatever, how long does it take from that moment to when they can actually foster?
Yeah, I mean, we send people on a training programme, which takes about, it's about 6 sessions, so it's about 6 weeks normally. Which is like 6 3-hour sessions. So it's not like a degree. It's just it's a short programme, but it just gives people a real feel of what the whole thing's about. And then what we call is a home assessment. So then we go and visit them in the home, and again that takes about 6 or 8 visits into the home. So that whole process, if you think about people's holidays and other arrangements, that can take about 7 or 8 months. That whole process.
So when you go into their home, what are you looking for?
I think the first thing is warm, welcoming people, because I always think that if I feel welcomed, then a child is likely to feel welcomed. If I feel like it's very cold atmosphere, then a child is going to feel that. So one of the first things is how warm and welcome I feel into that family. And then I think what I'm doing is asking people to tell me about how resilient they are, because I mean, if you've had teenagers, you do need to be pretty resilient. And you know, the first little challenge, we need people that can go through that. And as you heard with our carers earlier, you know, the first year was quite challenging, and they've come through that. And I think we need people who are actually able to see the child really within the behaviour. So we'll ask a lot of questions about, you know, what difficulties have you actually come through, and our best carers, the ones that haven't had a smooth and straightforward life, or who has, but do you know what I mean? But those that have actually, you know, gone through some ups and downs themselves and come through that, and can say, well, you know what, I learnt from that. And if they've got that resilience, then you know, then that's a very strong sign to us that they can actually foster some of our children.
Is it fair to say that, I mean, some of these children, particularly the teenagers, they will have had probably quite a difficult life.
Yeah.
Do they go in to try and set the benchmark for themselves? I.e., there's a bit of a challenge there, just to see what reaction they get back. Yeah,
they will do, and they will have been used to, you know, a different lifestyle. And it's a bit like, if you imagine if you go and stay with a new family, or even go and stay in a hotel, you don't quite know what the rules are. You know, you don't quite know, how do I behave in this situation? So I think, you know, if a young person goes into a home, they're trying to work out, well, this is what I did in my previous home, so what do I do? And I think one of the first things that carers have to do is set boundaries. What are the rules in my house? And then obviously young people will try and challenge that a little bit, as most teenagers do. But it's then just getting that balance, and as the previous carer said, you know, with love, with patience, with talking to young people about, you know, how they've, what's going on, that's what gets them through and settles them down.
I suppose never more so have you needed to make sure that every single check you do on these people is okay.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that people who want to foster have got any ulterior motive, but you've got to be very careful, haven't you now?
Yeah, we do very thorough checks. We call it, it's the DBS check now, which is like the old police check. And we get references, and we also have to make sure that people are healthy enough to take on the job. So we ask for a medical. We don't ask for people to be in tip-top medical condition, but we don't, you know, obviously if people are having, you know, just being diagnosed with a heart problem, for example, we want to know that was resolved before we place the child. But we're not, you know, many people have maybe offended, been in petty crime when they were youngsters themselves, and we don't turn those people away, because actually, if you've, you know, perhaps had a colourful teenage experience yourself, or in your early 20s, then you'll know what it's like to have been up and down, and, you know, maybe not stuck to the norm. So, you know, we'd be happy to hear from those people.
Because I don't suppose on any Barnardo's office wall there is a picture of of the ideal or the perfect foster carer, is there?
No, no. And I think it's that length and breadth of all different personalities and people, single people, people that are, on job seekers at the moment, that are maybe looking to go into sort of work and find a different type of work. There isn't any set profile of a carer. It's just an interest and a want to and an enthusiasm, really.
And if it doesn't seem to be working, if the child says, I don't like it there, or the foster people say, we can't get on with X, how long do you give it before you think maybe it's not working?
We've certainly had placements that, have lasted a few weeks. We don't want that to happen, but we work very strongly with our carers, and especially with older children, you can't match with everybody. So we try and match as well as we can at the beginning. But if we get it wrong, it's wrong, and I think we go in with that. That's the beauty of the older children, is that actually, they are sort of prepared that this might not be the right couple. It's a challenge. It depends on the person, because some people will find a disabled child of sort of 7 or 8 actually more easy than a teenager, especially maybe they've got sort of disability in their family, so they're used to working with disabled children. So it does depend on the family. But it is a specialist area, and it's very time consuming, so people need to be able to have the energy and put the time into looking after a youngster.
So it's when they get toward about 11 or so, is that when it becomes a testing time to try and place them? Absolutely,
yeah. I think anything really over 8 or 9, we're struggling to find carers. We advertise, we sort of send out leaflets, and probably 60-70% of the responses we get are for people that want to foster children who are sort of 7 and under, and we're looking definitely for sort of 10, 11 plus most of the time.
So in the West Midlands, how many have you got sort of 10 plus that you're trying to place at the moment?
Oh, well, you'll probably be shocked by this, but we get referrals in from the West Midlands, and anything from really Halesowen, Walsall, down to Coventry and Warwickshire. We're probably getting 100 referrals a week for teenagers across those areas. So there's a vast need for foster carers in this area.
That's a lot of children,
yeah,
isn't it?
It is.
And what circumstances brought them to need fostering?
Well, sometimes they've been in their own homes and it's just not worked out. Parents may be struggling with, say, mental health or drug issues, and they just can't keep the child safe and keep them looked after in the way that we'd want them to. So at that point, the children's teams and the social services are saying, look, we need a foster care, we need a foster placement for them. And sometimes they've been in other foster homes where it's just not worked out and those carers have not been able to manage to look after them. But the vast majority are coming from their own homes where parents are struggling to look after them for whatever reason.
I'm not sure if it's the right word to use, but by the time they get 8, 9, thereabouts, how damaged can some of them be?
They can be. They can have a number of issues. It isn't an easy process. It's not going to be like looking after your nephew or your niece. It's not going to be, because you know those people and you know how they work and you know the rules that they've sort of been brought up in. But I think with these children, you've got to really sort of in a way reshape them. You've got to teach them about boundaries and what is acceptable behaviour, what isn't acceptable behaviour. Some of them are not doing very well at school and they really need to be helped to, get up, get ready in the morning, get to school. They need to be helped with their homework because they've never perhaps had any homework help before. They need to be, they need a lot of talking to and patience, because maybe they've done a lot for themselves, which is good in one sense, but they can be too independent. They've had to make their own rules up as they've gone along. So, what our carers are doing is trying to bring them into their family rules.
And what percentage of those who are fostered go on to being adopted?
With the teenagers, mostly they don't. They just stay and stay in foster care. And what we like them to do really is to stay at least till they're 18, and then what we have is like a staying put arrangement where they can stay beyond even to 21, 22, like happens in everybody else's family.
Sure,
and come back, if they leave and come back, so that that the foster carers are a base for them.